Hi, and welcome to the And One Podcast. I am your host, Alex West, and today I'm joined by 94feetreport.com's Patrick Oxford, who has done a lot of research and put together a top 10 list for each position, as well as a top 50 list of players in the NBA this coming season. All those are available on 94feetreport.com. We have Patrick on to defend his thesis, including the opinion that Draymond Green is better than Anthony Davis, which lit Twitter on fire. So make sure to check out all his work and get ready to enjoy the podcast. Brent, take us away. So I'd like to welcome my guest today, Patrick Oxford. Patrick, how are you, sir?
Doing great. How about you?
I am doing very well. So you've written a whole slew of articles for the 94 Feet Report. You've done top 10 point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center, and now you've done top 50 players in the league. Seems like you've had a pretty busy month despite it being the off season.
Yeah, just trying to get some experience in. I'm relatively new to the writing scene. Been in the analytics scene a little bit longer, but I figured the more I write, the better I'm gonna become. If you look at the length of the articles, they definitely expand in length as I go, just as I gain more comfort. So hopefully I'll even be getting some better stuff out there.
All right, man. Well, we're glad that you're writing, and we're glad that you're giving us something to talk about. So, I want to talk about all these articles. You made your choices. You've lined up the top 10 players at each position. You talked about the top 50 players in the league. You made a lot of lists. First, let me ask you a question that's not on the sheet, and it's just occurring to me. What's your criteria for judging players based on position? Like, what puts a guy above another guy?
So I think if you perform your role as exactly as asked or better than asked on a very successful team, then that can definitely put your value up in my eyes. Volume scoring with middling efficiency or slightly above average efficiency, I mean, it's all right, but I don't really look at those things as huge pluses. Making other teammates better, that's a big thing to me. If you're looking at how other players are playing while a player's on the court and the rest of the team is just running a lot more smoothly while they're playing, I view that as very valuable.
Okay. And some guys you sort of, like, for example, the one I'm going to say, James Harden, you have him listed as a shooting guard. Is there any particular reason you choose? I mean, traditionally he's been a shooting guard. Obviously, he played a lot of the point. What helps you differentiate for guys like James Harden or Jimmy Butler who have to play multiple positions during any given game?
Sometimes I look at positional breakdown, sometimes the history of the player, and sometimes what the role they're going to be playing this year. I mean, I guess I could say the Rockets are going to start 2-point guards, and that would be kind of accurate, but I think it was probably better to put Harden in the shooting guard tier, just because without that, I don't know if I could rationalize a tier 1 in the shooting guards. He was the only shooting guard I had in tier 1, and I think the drop off from him to Jimmy Butler is big. Jimmy's a great player, but I do think there's a noticeable drop off there.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's jump in there and talk about the first question. How many franchise players are there in the league right now? And give me your definition of what a franchise player is, and then tell us how many there are in the league.
So, and to me, a franchise player is someone that kind of almost guarantees, or maybe does guarantee, that your team is going to be elite on one side of the ball. So, either offensively, they're guaranteeing you a top 5 offense. Defensively, they're guaranteeing you a top 5 defense. Or if there's someone that maybe can get you to a top 7, 8, 9 level in both of them, with impact on both sides of the court, that could do it as well.
Okay. So how many guys in the league do you feel are on that list?
I have 13 right now. I can't say that I'm just super confident that's the correct number.
Okay.
But looking at my list, I think the obvious ones, LeBron, KD, Kawhi, Steph, Harden, Westbrook. I think Giannis last season proved that he's definitely in that tier with the steps he took. He's an absolute just difference maker on both sides of the court. He can almost run the point. I'm not going to say he can actually run the point because there are some reads that he doesn't make just absolutely perfectly. But He's essentially a point guard on offense and a power forward / center on defense with the kind of impact he has.
Okay.
And then Chris Paul, Anthony Davis is definitely a franchise player. As much as people like to say I hate on Anthony Davis, he's definitely a franchise player. And then you get into the kind of iffy ones. Well, actually, no, I'm going to throw Cat into the definitely franchise player.
Okay.
And then Jokic, he's probably, but he's starting to get to the iffy. And then Rudy Gobert and John Wall, I think I definitely could make a case for franchise player. If someone wanted to say they weren't and they made a good argument, I might agree with them on some given days and not agree on others, I think it's really a fringe margin right there.
Okay, some interesting names on that list. I mean, obviously Rudy Gobert. That one jumped out at me. Jokic jumps out at me. But then some notable names left off the list. No Jimmy Butler. No Draymond Green. It's interesting that the guys that you chose. Let's just start with Jimmy. Let me ask you, what keeps Jimmy off that list? Does he make the list this year if he makes a big jump? Or what is it that makes you believe that he's probably not a franchise player, quote unquote?
I just don't see that he gets an offense or defense to the elite point by himself. Not many players can do that. But, yeah, I mean, he definitely has a better chance of jumping into that tier this season, back reunited with Thibodeau. I think that this is going to be a defensive system that fits his tendencies a lot better. And if he can go out there and turn Cat into a great defender, I mean, it'll be Taj Gibson as well and Thibodeau another year in Cat's year. But if he can go ahead and help that process, then he kind of starts to fit my criteria of players who make other players better.
Okay.
I haven't necessarily seen that out of him yet, but that's not to say he can't make that jump.
All right. Who are some other players that, with a good season this year, might put themselves on that list?
Porzingis is the first name that jumped out to me. He's definitely a lot of intrigue into his game. He can shoot the ball. There's some positional problems, I think, defensively. At his height, getting down to a stance is tough. So I think finding the right front court fit with him that can provide the rebounding lift that he requires while also being able to guard some fours, that would go a long way in improving Porzingis' value. I know a lot of people like to isolate player values into themselves, but I think the players around you can definitely elevate or, I guess, de-elevate. Yeah, that would be the right term.
I mean,
yeah, de-elevate their value. So I think if you put someone like Kenneth Faried's really undervalued in the league, I think right now. And if you put someone like him that can rebound, can go out and has experience already guarding fours in the modern NBA, can really cover his weaknesses while allowing his strengths to shine, because Faried has some gravity to his roles for sure. This year in the short corner, I think he was the deadliest in the short corner playing next to Jokic. The Knicks don't have a passer on Jokic's caliber, of course, but that doesn't mean that Faried can't have some success in a similar role in New York.
Okay. Anybody else besides Porzingis on that list? The guys who can jump in?
Yeah, the two Philadelphia guys I have, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Probably comes down to health for both of them, honestly.
Okay.
Embiid definitely showed that I think he has the talent to be that for sure last year. The Sixers were, I think, 8-9 points better with him on the court defensively. And, I mean, it wasn't really a cast besides Robert Covington, I think, that inspired a lot of hope defensively.
Right.
Robert Covington is one of my favorites, but him and Embiid alone should not have produced the defense that was being produced. So that gives me high hopes for Embiid's future. And then Simmons, I think, is a game changer. He's got some flaws in his game with the shooting, but he can definitely make other guys around him better.
Okay. I like that list. I'm still kind of iffy on Simmons. He hasn't played any games. He played at LSU, didn't make the tournament. There's just a lot of questions for me about a guy like Ben Simmons that I'm not saying he can't answer them, but I'm saying that in a single year, there are a lot of questions that have to be answered for him to play at that level. And I think it's kind of hard. I mean, you got to adjust to the speed of the game. You got to learn to play again after sitting out for a year. I think there's going to be a lot of things, a lot of hurdles for him to overcome.
Do you think there's a chance that he has a Blake Griffin-like impact when Griffin first came back from sitting out a year? with an injury, where it looked like he was clearly above the other rookies just for the fact that he had been around the NBA for a whole year, traveling with the team, had already become accustomed to some things that sometimes makes rookies struggle in game that are not necessarily part of the in-game process.
Oh, yeah, I definitely think that just being around the culture for a year is a leg up on anybody. Plus, he's probably just had a year to rest that he's never had in his adult life. You know, it's probably since he's been 15 or 16, he's playing 100 basketball games a year between college, high school, AAU, YBOA, whatever it is he's playing. And just to sit and rest, just to learn, to soak in the culture, to be around Brett Brown, to learn the system, I think that that's going to be a huge impact. I mean, he's got to be the odds-on favorite for Rookie of the Year this year.
Yeah, I would think so. I think there's like a decent case for Dennis Smith. Dennis Smith should have a lot of success if Dallas gives him the reins,
Which they will.
But yeah, they will. There's no reason not to. I mean, he definitely seems like he has the explosiveness to really thrive in that spacing that Carlisle always has in his offenses.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that given a year, given that time, if he's used it well, he'll probably be a step up for player. The thing that worries me about Embiid, and this huge question mark, is can he play? I mean, he looked tremendous in those 31 games, but it was 31 games. They shut him down on minutes limits. They shut him down for the year. You know, all these things, all these health questions start to pile up after a while, and you go, yeah, he's a great player when he's on the court, but how often can he be on the court?
Yeah, and I guess a good year for him would maybe be defined differently than other people because the talent is already there, so the good year for him could be the health.
Yeah.
He has a good year of health, and that's what puts him into the franchise player market.
Okay. So Porzingis, Embiid, Simmons, anybody else on who could jump into this this list after next year?
I don't know in terms of the young players. Maybe a veteran has a decent season and, you know, because of a better fit on the team, and he jumps into the latter half. But as far as yeah.
All right. So let's move on. Let's talk about positions. I had a question. In your research of this, what position did you feel like was the deepest in the league?
Point guard definitely stood out to me as the deepest.
Okay. How deep do you think that point guard, where there are elite level players?
Elite level, probably 4 going into next season, I think.
All right. And your top 4 are Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, and John Wall. And then followed behind by Mike Conley, Isaiah Thomas, and Kyle Lowry in that second tier.
Yeah, you can go ahead and take IT out with that hip injury.
Right.
I think he's pretty clear that he's not going to have near the impact any of the other players on even the top 50 list are probably going to have, unless you're counting postseason play, if he's only playing 2 months.
Right.
But, looking at some of the other players, Mike Conley, I think I wouldn't call him elite, and since he's the next player on my list, I mean, if you want to make – I know there's a lot of Kyrie supporters. They would make an argument for him being an elite
right
view. I'm not going to tell them that they're necessarily wrong. We'll see in Boston.
Okay. All right. On the flip side of that, what position is the most shallow?
Power forward. That's a position I really had trouble finding, like, 10 players I felt good about putting on a top 10 list.
Okay.
If you notice, I have Harrison Barnes towards the back half.
You're right.
He did play more power forward than small forward, but if I had a full 10 power forwards I felt comfortable with, I might have put him on the small forward list.
Yeah, your top 6 is pretty defensible. You've got Draymond Green, Anthony Davis, Paul Millsap, Blake Griffin, Kevin Love, and Kristaps Porzingis. That's that's pretty solid. But then after that, it does get a little bit shakier. Thinking about like Harrison Barnes, Aaron Gordon, LaMarcus Aldridge. If you said that to a Spurs fan, you might get hit. That LaMarcus.
Oh, and I live in San Antonio.
You better be careful in the street, man.
I know, right? So this is the LaMarcus hater. There's enough LaMarcus haters that I'll blend in with the crowd, I'm sure.
Yeah, my girlfriend is a big Spurs fan, and his name is not allowed to be spoken in this house.
That's probably about half of San Antonio right now, honestly.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I totally see what you're saying in terms of it being light. I would also throw in shooting guard. I mean, it just doesn't seem like there is a tremendous amount of quality shooting guards in the league right now. And, my list is probably a little bit different than yours, but the list is Butler, Harden, Thompson, and then Bradley Beal. Is Bradley Beal the fourth best shooting guard in the league?
I know,
and that's not very good.
Although, if someone wanted to tell me they really liked Chris Middleton, I've seen a lot of Chris Middleton support on Twitter lately. So maybe I don't know how you view Chris Middleton, but a lot of people view him really highly. So maybe I underrated him, possibly.
Middleton's
look into it more.
He's like a basketball Twitter darling. Like, everybody loves Chris Middleton. I'll be interested to see how he can play as Milwaukee ages and gets better. But until I see... honestly, like, for me, a lot of the things is until I see you play well in the postseason, I'm not really willing to put you into an quote-unquote elite level list. And so...
That's fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of these guys and how you have them ranked. And also, if you want to look at these lists, if you're listening right now, they are all up on 94 Feet Report. Patrick Oxford, the author, that's who we're talking with right now. He's done every position. He's got the top 10 breakdown. He's also got the top 50 players for the upcoming season. Really good stuff. Pages and pages of quality NBA content that you've done here, Patrick. But
thank you, man.
Yeah, man, no problem. I was preparing for the show, and I read all this, and the more I read, the more I wanted to read. So some notes that I took down. You have Isaiah Thomas listed above Kyrie on your point guard list, which you have Isaiah at number 6, and then you have Kyrie at number 9. Obviously, these guys in the news been swapped for one another. Why Isaiah Thomas better than Kyrie? Obviously, hip injury notwithstanding. Okay, take that out. Why would you say that Isaiah Thomas is a better player than Kyrie Irving?
So, if you look at most of the stats last season, especially offensively, there's not really much of a case for Kyrie, in my opinion. IT was significantly better scoring in the pick and roll. He scored 1.042 points per possession compared to Kyrie's 0.959 points per possession, according to Synergy. And then their passes that led out of the pick and roll that led to shots, they were worth about the same. But, that's subject to a lot of noise. So now that they're in opposite situations, it'll be interesting to see how the derived offense from the pick and roll goes.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was going to ask you is how much of it do you think is system-oriented for these guys? Do you think that kind of production might flip-flop, or how do you think it goes?
Yeah, I think if IT was going to be healthy this year, he'd be a great fit next to LeBron. He spotted up over 130 more times than Kyrie did last season, and he was a lot more efficient. He scored 1.22 points per possession in the spot up, whereas Kyrie scored 1.15 points. So, next to LeBron, it's hard to see that IT is not a quality fit, and then with LeBron on the court, I can't see how it would go much worse than it did with Kyrie with LeBron on the court.
Okay.
But then looking at Kyrie's fit in Boston, though, I think he's going to benefit a lot from Coach Stevens as a coach. He's definitely my favorite coach in the league right now. I don't think there's really even much competition in my mind for my favorite coach. Not to say he's necessarily the best coach, but my personal favorite. If you just look at the type of plays he draws out of bounds and the defenses they run on sideline out of bounds are just awesome. This isn't the time to gloat about Stevens, but anyways, I think he can do a lot for Kyrie. It'll be a matter of whether Kyrie wants to buy in. If you look at defensive synergy numbers, IT ranks a lot better than Kyrie. He ranked in the 47th percentile overall on defense, while Kyrie ranked in the 17th percentile.
Okay, that's an interesting number. I watched probably 70 Celtics games last year, playoffs included, and it was pretty well known among teams that were in the know, these educated teams. It was pretty well known that you could kind of isolate Isaiah when you needed to get a bucket and get one. Similar for Kyrie. Their defensive numbers, to me, sort of seem like they're a product of playing in the system that they played in. The Cavaliers played a pretty lax defense. The Celtics were a little bit more of a tuned-in defensive team. But it could be that Isaiah Thomas is just a better defensive player. It could be that Brad Stevens is a better defensive coach than Ty Lue. I'll be interested to see what kind of buy-in that Kyrie Irving has when it comes to playing in a more defensive-oriented system this year.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And some of the differences in their synergy numbers were kind of due to noise. In the spot up, IT ranked really well. Not really well, but really well compared to where you'd think he would rank.
Right.
Whereas Kyrie did not rank well at all. Spot up is a number that's really subject to volatility, just because it's just a matter of whether the other team really makes semi-contested jumpers or not. So, looking at the fact that that's about 20% of each of their defensive possessions, there could definitely just be some volatility just in that.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Uh, do you still see that as the rankings? I mean, hip injury notwithstanding, do you see Kyrie Irving, because so much of a player's ranking is about his fit with his team, and to change those two players will definitely change how they fit in with their particular teams.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I released the point guard article before the
You
trade.
did. It was August 3rd, so it was way back, like while all the
Okay.
trade Kyrie noise was still going on.
Okay, yeah. So I definitely think that Kyrie probably could go up in my rankings if I went back and looked at how the Celtics offense breaks down, whereas how that aligns with Kyrie's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
But I haven't done that yet. So I mean, he definitely could move up in my rankings based on the trade.
All right. Let's get to the most controversial point of the podcast.
Haha.
You put out your power forward rankings. You ranked Draymond Green over Anthony Davis, and the internet nearly exploded. So walk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're just going to start on the defensive side, because I think that's where it's kind of indisputable who has more impact. Not that Anthony Davis doesn't have a large impact, but Draymond's level of versatility and toughness and just everything he brings to the table, I think he's the better defensive player. I don't think I'm going out on a limb on saying that. Where I probably am going out on a limb is saying offensively he has at least similar enough impact to make it so that he's a slightly more impactful player. And that's only because of his team, I may point out. A lot of people like to bring up hypotheticals. Oh, well, how would Anthony Davis do in Golden State? How would Draymond do in New Orleans? The fact of the matter is Anthony Davis is not going to be playing in Golden State this year, and Draymond's not going to be playing in New Orleans.
Okay, because that's what I was about to ask you. Like, how much of this is based on fit, and that's
absolutely
okay. So that makes sense. I mean, obviously playing with Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala is a lot better than playing with Drew Holiday. Add in Rajon Rondo. Etuan Moore started at small forward for the Pelicans a little bit last year. You know, I mean, when you start to really dig into that Pelicans roster from last year, it is a sad state of affairs. So I can definitely agree with you that supporting cast playing a huge role in ranking Draymond over Anthony Davis.
And it is a sad cast, but when you look at their offense last season, it didn't fall off like you might expect with Anthony Davis on the bench. They had a 106.6 offensive rating with Anthony Davis on the court, 104.2 with him on the bench, according to Basketball Reference.
Okay.
I'm sure when Boogie was traded, that probably helped him. But the previous season, the offense actually played better with Anthony Davis on the bench.
Okay.
So at that point, I'm starting to see, okay, well, the season before that, so now we're talking about the 2014-15 season, the offense did see a huge increase with Anthony Davis on the court. So when I'm looking at players and the impact they're making on offense, I want to see consistently that the offense is better. Not every third year the offense is way better, and then we kind of get some middling in there that averages it out. So that's something I look at offensively.
The 2014-15 season is the year they made the playoffs, right? When they got swept by the Warriors?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, when the Thunder were very injured, very, very injured that season.
Okay. I'm looking at the Pelicans roster. I just pulled it up. I'm looking at it from last year, and there are about 25 names on it. So that, that to me is not an organization, a sort of an organization in transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that probably has a lot to do with Anthony Davis not being as impactful as he can be. I mean, playing with a ton of different guys. How much do you think he can improve as a player? I mean, he's only 23 years old. How much do you think he can improve as a player on this team? And then how much do you think he could improve as a player overall if perhaps fortune takes him somewhere else?
I think we're going to get a good look at how he's going to improve as a player by how he plays next to Boogie this season. Because if he goes in and plays the exact same way he's been playing the previous 4 seasons, it's not going to be as encouraging to me as if him and Boogie really go in with the mindset of let's play off of each other, let's make life easier for each other. They did that a little bit at the end of last season, and I want to see them keep ramping that up. If they can keep ramping that up, maybe they could squeak into the playoffs even without any legit small forward on the roster. I still think it'll be a stretch, but I think that's the only way it's going to happen. It's not going to be you get yours, I get mine. You get yours, I get mine. It really is going to have to be a team effort.
All right, let's talk about that actually. You've got Anthony Davis, who has spent time playing power forward. He's spent time playing center. You've got DeMarcus Cousins, who spends the majority of his time playing center. How does the fit work for these guys in terms of X's and O's?
Well, it would be a lot easier if they had that small forward that I keep harping on. But as far as the fit goes, I think that DeMarcus Cousins is probably a better outside shooter than Anthony Davis, and that he's going to be having to be the one that maybe takes a step out to space out the court. But that's going to also mean that they're going to have to run a lot of off-ball action, I think, in terms of both DeMarcus setting screens and then maybe running a flex option where another person will set the screen for DeMarcus, confuse the defense, hopefully get a mismatch, and that also will draw the defense to the off-screen action and let Anthony Davis get a lot more single coverage. He didn't see very much single coverage last year, but doing off-ball action with DeMarcus Cousins should get him enough single coverage that, I mean, maybe we can start seeing that impact we've all been looking for.
The Pelicans are violating my number one rule of basketball in that you can't have 2 guys that can't shoot. They've got like 15 guys that can't shoot on their roster.
Right?
I just don't.
Oh, goodness.
Drew Holiday's a 35% three-point shooter. I mean, that's a little bit of spacing. But Drew Holiday and Rondo, and then God knows who their small forwards are going to be looking at this roster. I mean, I'm looking at it, and I really don't know. Is Jordan Crawford at 6'4" going to be your starting small forward? But, you know, they have to add a player in some way, shape, or form who can space the floor, and that's not something they have right now. I mean, unless it's Frank Jackson, Darius Miller, Ian Clark, I don't know. I'm not seeing it.
Well, Frank Jackson, sadly, I think is going to miss a decent amount of the season. He just had a second foot surgery.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a bummer because I was actually really high on him in the draft. But, yeah, I don't really know how they get help. I mean, you don't want to just keep mortgaging the future for the present, especially when you don't know how long you're going to have DeMarcus Cousins. And say you do max out DeMarcus Cousins. I'm not sure how long. I guess Drew Holiday just signed his contract. So when AD comes to sign, what's that tax bill going to look like?
Yeah, it's a pretty high tax bill for a team that does not look very competitive on paper. It will be interesting to see as the season goes along how these two can coexist and how this team can coexist and become relevant in a loaded Western Conference.
Yeah. So looking at how Anthony Davis kind of impacted the team with his passing and scoring last season, he ranked in the 44th percentile in points per possession plus assists, which is exactly how you think it would be described, at 1.148. Draymond Green, on the other hand, ranked in the 95th percentile at 1.383 points per possession plus assists. There are only 6 players that ranked higher than Draymond that had a higher amount of possessions than him.
Okay, who was it?
I gotta go look up the list. I know Chris Paul, LeBron James, Kevin Durant.
Okay, so
was on there.
It's a pretty solid list of players. Draymond finding himself in pretty elite company.
Yeah, well, Jeff Teague was in there. James Harden was in there. Pretty much ball handlers,
right?
People that create for other people.
And I mean that's you can say a lot of things about Draymond Green, but that's essentially one of the things that he is a ball handler and creator. He doesn't put the ball on the deck all that often, but he puts himself in a position where he can handle the ball in 3-on-2s when there are 2 guards behind the ball in Golden State's offense. You know, a lot of times that they'll stretch the floor so much that 2 players will end up behind on a pick and roll, and that's what that's the situation in those 3-on-2 situations, in these 4-on-3s. That's when Draymond really excels as a player.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what more people want of him offensively. He did have a bad shooting year last year. As much as people said, "Oh, Kevin Durant makes life easier for everybody." I mean, that wasn't the case for Draymond, apparently, judging by his shooting percentages. But I mean, his scoring isn't going to be more efficient than Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson's, regardless. You want him passing, making the correct reads.
And I think probably one thing that doesn't sit tremendously well with people is just saying, okay, last year Anthony Davis averaged 28 points, 11 rebounds, 2.1 assists. And then when you flip over and talk about Draymond, he averaged 10 points, 7.9 rebounds, and 7 assists. So he's better in the assist category, but far, far worse in both points and rebounds. So it's hard to reconcile. And I mean, this is just universally true of basketball. It's hard to reconcile when you see such a differentiation in stats to say, well, player B is better than player A. But when you think about it in terms of fit, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and AD did play a couple more minutes, which some people may say is a positive in his favor. I think Draymond getting to sit out minutes and be a refresher for the playoffs is probably a positive in his favor in the long run, though. So, I mean, the per-game stats look a little bit worse. Not a whole lot worse, but a little bit worse.
Yeah. I mean, when you start to compare per 36 numbers, they start to get a little bit better. But, I mean, I just think this is one of the there's this ongoing argument, and, people that we work with have weighed in on this on Twitter. Everybody's in on it. There's eye test versus analytics. And Draymond Green is the sort of the summation of that. Like, the eye test, you can't really tell quite how impactful he is, but then when you start to look at the numbers, it really starts to open up, and that Draymond Green is a very, very high caliber player.
Yeah, that eye test versus the analytics Twitter has actually been a really fascinating debate on Twitter. Duncan Smith actually had a great article the other day. I think people should check it out on Nikola Jokic, the battle between the analytics and the eye test.
And that was, for me, that was one of the things that started. It sort of blew up around the Duncan Smith article, where people were really, really on about how too much stock is put into numbers. And a lot of old school NBA fans and old school fans of any sport will tell you that you don't need numbers beyond points, assists, rebounds, steals, blocks to really understand the impact of a player. But it's like Bill James said, when you make a statistic measurement, it should tell you what you know 4 times out of 5 and surprise you 1 time out of 5, and then you have a metric that probably works. And that's kind of what it is that most times these advanced stats should probably tell you what you already know, but sometimes, particularly in the case of Draymond Green, Nikola Jokic, it should surprise you, and you should say, well, these guys are a lot more impactful than I thought they were.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's as much as the eye test. I mean, when I watch Jokic play, like, I don't need stats to tell me this dude is freaking amazing. Like, the things he does with his passing vision is just, I've never seen it done before by a big man. I mean, you can go back and probably pick out some guards in NBA history, but as far as big men go, I'm not sure if I've seen something like it. And he's just at the beginning of his career. That's kind of scary.
He's very Bill Walton-esque when it comes to that. And I mean, that's definitely a big impact for the Nuggets. And another part of the Jokic argument is, how often has Joe, average NBA fans, watched the Nuggets play? I mean, I probably watched them 4 or 5 times last year, but even still, like, I'm probably in the high-end percentage of people who watch the Nuggets when it comes to the comparison to everyday fans. So, not seeing a player, not seeing Giannis, not seeing Nikola Jokic, not seeing Nurkic for Portland, it sort of downplays the impact that these guys can have when they're not on TNT, when they're not on ABC.
I agree.
So, next question. Who were the hardest players to leave out of your top 50? I saw you had a couple of honorable mentions. Were there players that you really struggled with leaving them out?
I want to see what Nerlens Noel can do. I was tempted to put him in there, but I think getting that qualifying offer is kind of an interesting situation for him. I mean, I know he wants to play his ass off so he can go ahead and get a huge contract from whatever team it is this next offseason, but he's also probably not going to feel thrilled about coming in and reporting for a team that he probably thought was about to hook him up this offseason.
A lot of controversy over his contract, was seeking a very high-end offer and ended up with a very small offer. So he's on the Mavericks for one more year. And we all know what kind of impact a player can have in a contract here. Do you see Noel playing his way into a big money contract?
I mean, certainly bigger than what he has now.
Well,
obviously,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to get the money he wants, I don't think. I mean, I really value the things he does. Defensively, he has some of the best hands I've ever seen on a big man and instincts to match. But I don't think he's going to get as much money as he wants. I could see $20 million a year, though. I mean, I think that's probably the high end, and that's if he really shows out this year. But there's enough injury concerns that nobody's going to, I think, really want to just go all out with an offer.
Sure. Anybody else on that list that was pretty difficult to leave off?
Yeah, George Hill. I don't think he's going to have much of a case going forward as he ages, but I kind of felt bad about not giving him a shout out. He had an awesome season in Utah last year. But in Sacramento, they're going to be trying to feature De'Aaron Fox a lot, I think. And even though I think George Hill's going to get the starting role, I don't think it's going to be the role that he kind of had in Utah.
Right, and in Utah, sort of an off-the-ball player a lot of the time, playing with Gordon Hayward, a guy who could feature his spot-up shooting. That's probably not something that Sacramento is going to allow him to do very often.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, he's going to spot up next to Fox, though, because Fox cannot shoot a lick.
Well, true, and he'll have to learn, but those pairings, they're just weird pairings. Mm-hmm. Putting those two together is difficult.
He's got to play a lot more two-guard this year if he's going to want to see as much time as I think he was expecting when he signed that contract.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so Nerlens Noel, George Hill. Anybody else on that list?
Carmelo was on the honorable mention, but he actually sneaked into the top 50 because I suck at proofreading and had Bradley Beal on the list twice.
All right, there you go. All right, congratulations to Carmelo Anthony getting in at number 50 because Bradley Beal was already on the list.
Bradley Beal is not two people, apparently.
There you go.
News to me.
So, who might fall off the list from going from this season into next season? Guys that maybe are in a bad fit or are going to age.
There wasn't a lot of older players towards the back half of the list. Iguodala's probably, well, not that Melo, maybe Melo too, but Iguodala's probably the candidate to possibly see some decline this season. If he starts seeing this decline this season, next season he's not going to have nearly as good of a argument, especially if he's no longer in their death lineup. I don't expect that to be the case, but if he falls off to the point where he's no longer in the death lineup this season, he's certainly not in the top 50 next season.
And they have done such a good job replacing players in Golden State. They have Patrick McCaw, who played significant. When I say significant, I don't mean in terms of quantity. I mean in terms of quality. He played significant finals minutes. They drafted Jordan Bell as a replacement for David West. The steal of the draft, which we have talked about on this show. You and I have many times how much we love Jordan Bell, but they have started to replace guys with guys of similar talent or similar skill sets. And so maybe it's possible that you see a Jordan Bell or you see a Patrick McCaw sneaking into those death lineups as the season starts to go along.
Yeah, that was my thought, especially if Draymond has his shot back this season. Last season he struggled with that three-point shot, but if he can start hitting that again, then him and Jordan Bell as a front court tandem, wow.
And Bell is a prolific passer. I mean, that's one of the things that impressed me both watching his film at Oregon and watching him during the Combine and Summer League. The kid can pass.
Yeah, he got that 5x5 at Summer League.
That's right. All right, who wasn't in the top 50 that can make them a case this year that they deserve to be?
In this year or years to come? Year?
Make their case this year that they should be on the list next year.
Okay, so, the obvious ones like Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, Dennis Smith, I think D'Angelo Russell's fit in Brooklyn is really interesting. It's like a system is perfectly made for him. So he definitely could see a step up. Brandon Ingram. And then this is kind of a homer pick, but OG Anunoby,
Okay,
I think
a guy that we talked about back during the draft. You were pretty high on Anunoby.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm still high on him. Even if he has to miss his rookie season, I think 2-3 years down the line, the dude can make an impact.
Okay, I mean he definitely has the qualities that you want in an NBA player as a 3-and-D guy, and a guy who can sort of evolve and maybe play 2 through 4, as you see a lot of guys do when it comes to quote-unquote positionless basketball.
I think 5 is definitely within the realm of possibility for him. He's got a 7'3", I think, and a half wingspan.
Okay, all right. I mean, yeah, that's a possibility. It's a weird fit for him, but I'll be interested to see how he grows into it.
Mm-hmm. I expect the Raptors to look quite a bit differently by the time he's peaking.
That's true. That's a very good point. I mean, we're definitely on the tail end of the Lowry, Serge Ibaka, DeMar DeRozan experiment. I don't know how many more years you can throw yourself in viability. I mean, Zach Lowe always talks about this thing where sometimes you want to be the team that wins 50 games, and that's okay, because if you're the team that wins 50 games, you can attract another marquee free agent. But at some point, this Lowry DeRozan thing, you just have to ship it off, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to think it could be getting to that point already. But what did you think about the? Did you see the Lowry versus DeRozan debates on Twitter last night?
No, I did not. Was that what Twitter was? Twitter's always blowing up about something.
Oh my goodness, there were people saying DeRozan was top 25.
I personally
and they were like top 25 easily. They were like, "Oh, you don't think he's top 25? That's absurd."
Personally, I'm sort of in your camp. I mean, I know you don't value him quite as much as a shooting guard. I don't love players who can't shoot. I mean, he's like a 29% three-point shooter. I want guards that can shoot and kill me. I mean, sue me, whatever. That's just how the modern NBA works. You need guys who can space the floor, and DeMar DeRozan's floor spacing, it's not good.
I agree. I totally agree. There's not many avenues I see to him becoming a significantly better player at this point in his career.
No, he's what, 29 now?
Is he that old?
I think he is. Okay. Maybe he's a little bit younger. Hold on, let me get a real number there. But he's 28. He just turned 28, which I guess he's probably still in that 28 to 31 range where shooting guards sort of peak. But a guy who just can't score efficiently. That's the big word that you put when you start making that list of pros and cons with DeMar DeRozan. Beside the negative, you put the word efficiency, and then you circle it, and then you underline it twice.
And then you probably do the same to defense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how this turned into a rip on the Raptors podcast, but apparently...
Yeah, I'm sorry, Raptors fans. I do like y'all's future. OG Anunoby's the GOAT.
He's the GOAT. But, I mean, man, I don't know. I'm not a big DeMar DeRozan fan. I'm not really a big Kyle Lowry fan. I totally understand the value. Kyle Lowry is that textbook guy who went from underrated for so long that we now kind of overrate him. He's sort of the hallmark of that for me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, anything else you want to get in on the podcast while you're here? Any other crazy Rudy Gobert is a franchise player hot takes that you want to get in?
No, I think I'm done with the hot takes for now. I'll save the rest of them for next time.
I was going to say, the floor is always open to you and your hot takes. You can come here.
Oh, awesome.
NBA safe space. You can say whatever crazy thing you want, and I'll ridicule you, but only just a little.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure the big ridiculing will come later on by Twitter universe, which is fine.
Oh yeah, believe 100% that Twitter's going to ridicule you for anything and everything. But
I hope so. At Hoops Metros, just
there it is.
Let's have a debate.
He got his Twitter plug in saying "at me, bro." If you want to read all this, Patrick has done a fantastic job. Whether you agree with it or not, I definitely think it's worth a read, particularly if you don't agree with it, because he dropped his Twitter handle and you can get at him. But everything's up.
There it is.
Everything is up on the 94feetreport.com. He's done breakdown by position. He's broken it down by the top 50 NBA players, and it is most definitely worth a read. So, Patrick, thank you for coming on the show. Always a pleasure to have you, and I'm sure as we go on, we'll have you back and let you have the floor again.
Awesome. I can't wait to have you on my podcast as well.
That's right. Get a little plug in for your podcast.
Yeah, so I'm going to be dropping a draft podcast pretty soon, looking at prospects for this next draft. I have scouting experience from the past 2 seasons. If you want to come check out my work, I'm sure you can find it on my Twitter, and if not, I can direct you. But I have both draft guides out, and I'm really looking forward to breaking down the niche prospects. That's what I want this podcast to be. We're going to touch on the big names like the Michael Porters, the Doncic's, but I want to get into what are these second round picks going to be looking at? What are these late first? Who's going to be that late first sleeper? I want to be the first one to be looking at these players.
Okay, so you're going to have people come on your podcast and sort of break down these mid-range guys. I'll be doing the ACC. We haven't got the schedule just worked out just yet. But, when we get that out, we'll definitely make it available to the Twitter universe so they can come and ridicule why we think certain players are as good. But, Patrick, it's always nice to have you on the show. Can't wait to come on your podcast. Can't wait to have you back. And most importantly, can't wait for the NBA season to actually get started.
Right. This is going to be one of the best ones, hopefully.
This is the best League Pass year. I mean, I've been high on League Pass in years past, but I don't think anything can top this season for me.
I just can't wait to see Rubio and Gobert, honestly. This is going to be a fun combo.
There are so many teams, Minnesota, Utah. But listen, that's another podcast. We'll have to.
It is. I'm getting off track. My bad.
We'll have to bring you back and do who are your favorite League Pass teams, because that's a whole podcast right there. All right, man. Well, thank you for coming on. We'll see you next time, okay?
All right, sounds great. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks to Patrick Oxford for coming on the show and enlightening us on his top 10 list. Make sure to check out all his writing at 94feetreport.com, as well as follow him on Twitter at HoopsMetroX, and make sure you're keeping up with everything he is doing. More writers coming up next week, some new faces. We're going to talk about all kinds of things, talk about NBA expansion, talk about the Detroit Pistons, talk about a lot of quality NBA content in the lead up to the regular season, which can't come soon enough. So for the And One podcast, I'm your host, Alex West. See you next time.